Welcome to We Do Not Know What We're Calling This Yet with Tall and Nichols, live from Andrew Nichols' kitchen.
Yeah, we're here. We're actually doing this. I'm recording this on my phone as well as in the microphone as we speak.
Dreams do come true.
It's a historic moment. It really is. We were meant to do this.
Do you believe in miracles?
Who doesn't, Tall? I saw.
Russians.
Russians don't. No, they had a tough time with their miracles. Yeah, no. There was a movie about that. I watched that movie. It was a good movie.
The Russians never saw it.
Yeah, we're kind of jumping in hot right now. Sorry if you don't know who we are. We're two dudes who decided that we wanted to record a podcast because why not?
Let me explain who Andrew John Nichols is.
That's me, not the guy talking.
Yeah.
We wrote bios for each other. So we're cool.
Andrew John Nichols was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, and is an avid Philadelphia Union soccer fan. Now attending Bucknell University, Nichols studies Japanese philosophy and economics in hopes of being a ballet dancer. Having played multiple sports throughout his high school career, such as starting as the center for the Austin High School football team, he led the basketball team in technicals and flops his freshman and sophomore year. In no way are he and I experts, but Andrew Nichols can offer perspectives and insights that others can't.
Most of that was true, if not all of it.
I would say 95%.
I was in fact born in Lincoln, Nebraska. That is a fact. That is an undeniable fact. Now I get to read your wonderful bio that I wrote. By the way, the name is real. The $, quite obviously, is not a part of my name, but this is the entirety of his real name. In other words, just wait for it. Tall Jacob Shlomo Mintz is a Palestinian terrorist who moved here to become a sleeper agent, currently awaiting his next mission to fulfill the glory of Allah. He is an avid fan of Juwan Howard, this podcast, and the metric system. He is currently attending Ithaca College as a women's studies major and is the founder and lone member of the Ithaca Frisbee golf team. The song currently stuck in his head is Ass and Titties by 3-6 Mafia. He watches a lot of sports and movies and stuff, which makes him qualified to talk about things on this very podcast.
The only thing that is not true in my introduction, which Nichols beautifully wrote, was that I hate the metric system. Screw them.
Go America.
Go America.
Go America.
Go America.
So that's basically who we are in a nutshell. About 40% of those bios was actually true. But you know what? We'll roll with it. You know what? You don't need to know about us. And chances are we're going to have two of you actually listen to this thing, and the two of you will probably already know us. So.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, really. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Hi, Michael Graziano, because you know he's going to listen and be a guest eventually.
He will be. We will have a Chillin' with Graz segment.
Yes, that's a segment. Not a whole show. He doesn't deserve a whole show.
But I think to start off, we need to talk... You know, speak English first. We need to start with the hot-button issue, which is the NBA Finals.
The NBA Finals are set. We're recording this on June 2nd, 2014. So we now know that the NBA Finals will be
the Milwaukee Bobcats versus the Minnesota Timberlakes.
As you can clearly see, we are very qualified and we can do this show very well.
Yeah,
we're good at this thing.
But Nichols, let me ask you: do you think the two teams that play now...
Stop acting like you don't know anything about basketball. It ruins your credibility right off the bat.
All right, so
we're
let's
a
talk
couple
about
minutes
this.
in and our credibility is already ruined.
So how far could Juwan Howard carry the Miami Heat on the bench as an assistant coach?
He could carry them very far, Tall. I think they could win it all. Shocking statement. I think the Miami Heat can win this. By the way, 2014 Finals, San Antonio Spurs versus the Miami Heat.
We never got to that.
We never did get to
My
that.
bad.
You jumped right into Juwan Howard and all that crazy, whatever.
I think it was worth mentioning.
It was.
All right, so let's start with this. Nicholas, let me ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Your prediction.
I think Spurs in 7. Home court. It's the major difference this year.
I'm going to say I disagree. I respect your opinion. Miami in 6.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it would be because the finals is going back to a 2-2-1-1-1 format. So Game 6 is in Miami.
Which is really smart, can I say?
I like it.
I thought it was such a ridiculous format that everything else was 2-2-1-1-1, and that the finals were 2-3-2. It made no sense. And
well, I think the part that really it gave the underdog a really big advantage.
Huge.
To
get
obviously
3 home games straight.
Well, I think Going back to the 2011 finals, I don't think the Mavericks could have possibly done if it was a 2-2-1-1-1, because they split in Miami, and then they lost Game 3 in Dallas, and then they won Game 4 in Dallas and Game 5 in Dallas. If Game 5 is in Miami, they go into it 2-2. If Miami takes a 3-2 lead, then it goes back to Dallas. If you're being kind, maybe they make it a 7-game series.
Yeah.
But that's just one example of how the 2-3-2 favors the underdog. I think I like the 2-2-1-1-1 better. It's a lot more fair.
I think that's what the key term is. It is fair. It allows both teams to have equal amount.
Yes. And the thing is, it gives the home team a distinct advantage if it goes to a Game 7, because
Yes.
the statistic, we all have heard it, home teams win Game 7s 80% of the time. And it's just so, I can only think, I think there's only one example of a team winning in the finals on a Game 7 on the road, and that's the Celtics when Bill Russell was still on the team, in Los Angeles against Wilt and Jerry. But I think that's going to be the main difference this year between this year and last year's finals. Is I think that's what's going to carry the Spurs.
You think that's going to be the difference maker, home court advantage?
I do, because Game 7s are so hard to win on the road, and I think these teams are so close that it's going 7 games. It went 7 games last year, and that it literally the Spurs were closer than any team ever to winning the finals,
and then not
without winning it.
Well, I think all the points you made incredibly valid. The reason that I believe Miami Heat have an edge in the series is because of the simple fact they have the best player in the world. And you know what? And it's not as far as people think, but on that series, Miami has the best player on the floor.
I agree.
And that makes a difference. I think that could be the difference maker, and LeBron James is the ultimate X factor.
I think the bigger difference, though, is that the Spurs have the best 2 through 4 or 5 players.
The Spurs.
Number 2, you would say, is probably Parker, right? Then Duncan, then maybe Kawhi or
Parker
Ginobili.
has been battling injuries this entire postseason, and it's not. You really have not seen it affect his play. But
he did exit that Game 6 against Oklahoma City.
And you know what? I'm not saying anything with Parker. I think he's a fantastic player. Ankle injuries are incredibly tricky.
They are.
And they can linger.
But I don't think... You saw it in the second half of that Game 6. The Spurs miss less of a beat without their star players than any other team in the league.
Well, just to go to a brilliant written article by Kirk Goldsberry on Grantland today, which really went into depth of how the Spurs built the most dangerous bench in the NBA.
It's true. I read that article, and it's just it's kind of incredible just how much Pop was able to experiment in the regular season, and was able to just. He's brilliant. I really I think I can follow and keep up with the X's and O's that the Spurs do, and then they just make 3 passes in a row, and just that I just blow my mind.
I have not seen more beautiful played basketball. It's just breathtaking to watch, because it's not what we see so much in the NBA, where it's isolation heavy and it's just players asserting themselves. It's team. It's entirely team, and I love the Spurs organization starting with character and then building that off into skill.
It's a throwback really to the Magic and Bird teams of the 1980s, the Lakers and Celtics, because we grew up in the post-Jordan era. I really started becoming a basketball fan. I'm a Knicks fan, full disclosure. When the Knicks made their run in the 1999 finals, that's when I really got into basketball. So I'm living in the post-Jordan era, which from that point until, I guess, when they changed the hand check rules and the Steve Nash Suns came up, was very heavy ISO basketball. And it was, dump it to the best player, clear out a lane, let him post up or take a guy off the dribble. And it was the early days of Kobe and Shaq, and Tracy McGrady was dominating in Orlando on pure isolation, Vince Carter in Toronto, all those guys. So to see the Spurs team, and the Spurs were one of them, they, before Ginobili and Parker rose to prominence, the Spurs were the team that, dumped the ball into Duncan or run a high-low action with Duncan and Robinson, and they've morphed into this team that passes the ball so beautifully, uses screens so beautifully. It's amazing to watch, and I love it every time.
Well, I think what's really interesting about the Spurs is when, asked, Pop would always say, how do you get to a championship contender? Get the number one pick every 10 years, and then build and hope you get it right.
They're lucky.
You know what? I think they've kind of added to that a lot more because you know what? They have Tim Duncan, but they didn't have a number one pick after that. And what they did with Tim Duncan was they understand Father Time gets them all, right?
He's 38.
We can't argue that Father Time gets them all, but
undefeated.
We can delay it. And that's what the Spurs have done in essentially the way that not just this year, but over, I would say, the last 5 years, 6 years of how Popovich has managed Tim Duncan's minutes and has made it possible for him to be the player that he is that we saw in the last 5 minutes of that Oklahoma San Antonio series.
Yeah, let's turn our attention back to the finals. I think Duncan being managed so well in the regular season is one of the reasons why I like the Spurs in the series. But another part is Spoelstra's, he's a smart guy.
Can we say Spoelstra is a top 5 coach in the NBA right now?
Sure.
Because he is so overlooked of the players that they have on that roster that they completely forget of how great of a coach he has been.
Spoelstra implemented the small ball system that they run. He is the guy that led the change to the small ball that now the Knicks were successful with last year, not so much this year.
Oh, really? They weren't successful with it this year? Okay.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Hey, we have little girls not listening to this
we just broke the explicit tag.
Yeah.
Good job, everyone. Well done. Anyway, but Spoelstra, going back to my main point, Spoelstra is copying Pop, basically, because Dwayne Wade played 54 games this year in the regular season. The Heat don't worry about the regular season anymore. They're like, okay, Indiana, you can get the 1 seed. That's fine. We'll take our 2 seed and we'll just kick your asses at home and at your place too. What was up with Indiana, by the way? That was ridiculous. Their second half of the season.
Can we talk with Indiana, because I think Indiana is a perfect example of getting across to people just want more. Like
disease of more.
The
disease of me, I think, is the actual term that Pat Riley coined.
Yeah.
He was discussing winning back-to-back championships and how hard it is, and he quoted, "The disease of me is what takes over once people get one championship. More money, more stats, more everything."
And you know what? I think Indiana Pacers kind of got a taste of that before they got anything.
Yeah.
They got to the Eastern Conference Final last year. They rode to the All-Star game with one of the best records in the NBA, if not the best.
They were on pace for a 67 wins season.
And they just stopped playing as a team after that.
They did. Well, I think there are so many storylines with Indiana.
Yeah.
There's Lance being a total nutcase. There's Paul George allegedly impregnating a woman in Miami, and Roy Hibbert. God knows what happened to Hibbert. I think Indiana, I think, is one of the people that can make some really big moves this offseason, and they can go one way or the other, and they can become the elite team that can take the mantle from Miami, or they can go the other way and slip into the mediocrity of the Nets and the Raptors and the Wizards, all those teams that don't really stand a chance.
I think this is Indiana's most important offseason in their franchise right now, because this is a make-or-break offseason for them. They have a lot of options to choose from, so let's break them down a bit real quick. Do they keep Hibbert? Do they trade him?
You keep Hibbert.
You keep Hibbert?
Name me another guy who's 7'2" that can play the defense that Hibbert plays just by standing there.
Me.
Of course you. Yeah, I forgot to mention. Tall is 7'2" and a slender build, and he's also African American. Tall Jacob Shlomo Mintz is African. No, he's not. He's Jewish as hell. But
I completely understand what you're saying, but
excuse me.
You're looking at the trade packages that they could get from Hibbert.
Well,
and I thought a really interesting one was dealing Hibbert to Portland.
For Aldridge?
For Robin Lopez, C.J. McCollum, and Wesley Matthews.
Where does that get them, though?
You have Robin Lopez, who starts at center right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have, and you know what? He's not as good defensively. He's no scrum on defense, but offensively, he's, I would say, he has much more of a game offensively than Hibbert does. Then you have C.J. McCollum, who in case, we have to get to Lance Stevenson, if they resign him, what goes on with that, but
So, as you were speaking,
Yes.
the main problem with Indiana, I think we can both agree, is not defense, it's offense.
Absolutely. And also, no bench whatsoever.
This is true, but I think the main thing is they don't have a guy who can penetrate the defense and really take over.
I think Paul George can be that guy, but he has not shown it yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't shown it consistently enough
As
yet.
you were making your points about Hibbert, I went to the ESPN trade machine, and it of course doesn't allow you to trade draft picks. But so, how about this? Ty Lawson for George Hill and Russell Butler is expiring, and either a first or second round pick. Who says no?
No, I don't see why. Because George Hill he's okay. But if you can get Ty Lawson in there, if Indiana can get a real point guard who is...
And you figure Denver gets another draft pick, they're looking to rebuild.
Denver understands that they, can we talk about Denver? They went from having the third best record in the West to then firing George Karl, which was just stupid. You win Coach of the Year, and then you get knocked out of the first round of the playoffs because one of your best players tore his ACL.
I think...
and that Steph Curry just gets ridiculously hot, and you dismantle that team immediately, and then you just watch chaos ensue.
Yeah, I think it's bad because they have a lot of good young pieces. Before, Gallinari's always injured. I loved Gallinari when he was a Knick.
I know you love Gallinari.
I had a thing. He gave me a half job. Anyway, I just think it was dismantling that team so early was really dumb. Golden State proved that they were a good team. It's not. I don't think it was an upset last year, even though Golden State was the 6th seed.
It's an upset just because of where they were ranked, but when you were watching that game, I had Golden State winning it. I did not have them winning it,
Emphatically. But,
that was ridiculous.
Okay, I have another trade for you.
Okay, shoot.
Another trade for you.
Okay.
Lance Stevenson sign and trade for Jimmy Butler on the Bulls. So
why would the Bulls want Lance Stevenson?
Instant offense.
Offense, but they don't...
Lance Stevenson, if his head is right, which is a big if.
That's a big
It's a big if, but Lance Stevenson's ceiling, let's not forget here, Lance Stevenson is
only
23 years old.
He's very young.
Lance Stevenson is a young dude.
So is Jimmy Butler, and I think Jimmy Butler is...
Lance Stevenson, I think, has a higher ceiling as a player in this league.
I disagree because I think Jimmy Butler can stay in this league as a contributor for many, many years to come.
I think Lance can too. I think you put Lance under Tom Thibodeau, and I think you will see a difference. Because Tibbs is much more of a enforcer and a better coach, I think, than Vogel. And even though, everyone says, oh, Donnie Walsh and Larry Bird, they control Lance, I don't think they're that involved in the day-to-day goings-on of the Pacers. I think that's
Legend has better to do.
It's a little bit of an overstatement.
Yeah.
I think that's a kind of a misnomer in the league. But anyway, so just assuming the Bulls would accept that because they want another piece, another title contending piece. Lance Stevenson, I think, can be that guy. Jimmy Butler, at best, he's going to be the 4th best player on a title team. Can we agree on that?
We can agree on that.
Okay. So if you...
No one's putting their stock that heavy into Jimmy Butler. But no. I don't think that Chicago does it because, I think part of it is they want character guys, and Lance has not proven that yet.
If you throw in a draft pick, do you think they'd accept it? Like a second-round pick? Or an expiring contract?
But, Indiana doesn't need Jimmy Butler that bad.
Here's my thing. If you can pair... So let's say they make those two moves.
Yeah.
They swap George Hill and Russell Butler is expiring along with a draft pick for Ty Lawson.
Yeah.
And then they shift Lance Stevenson for Jimmy Butler. My thing is, Paul George to me is a 2-guard. He's not a 3. I think he's the evolutionary T-Mac who's a much better defender. Because you saw in the Miami series, he did an okay job of slowing down LeBron James, but he shut Dwayne Wade down in that Game 5. I think Paul George can be a shooting guard. So if your wing players are Ty Lawson, who's not a great defender, but Jimmy Butler and Paul George, who have long ass arms,
they probably average the most steals in the NBA.
That's just on the perimeter,
Yeah.
and then they have an enforcer and a great rebounder in David West, and a guy with unparalleled verticality in Roy Hibbert. I don't know, man. I like that team a lot more than I like their current team, and all of that is conceivable. Maybe the Butler for Stevenson sign and trade is a little bit out there, but I think that's all conceivable, and that's stuff they can and should do, or at least look into.
I think they should look into it. I would be careful before pulling the trigger into anything like that. Because think about this. Before, in the beginning part of the year, Indiana had the best, their starting five played better than anyone's starting five. They played very well together, and they are trying to recreate that a bit, and I still think they can. My problem with Indiana right now is that's it. They have no one to go to. They have no one off the bench who can provide a really, a spark.
My thing with Indiana is that they don't have offense, and I think part of that has to do with part of their success in the first half of the season. I think it has to do with the fact that they were hitting shots.
Oh, they were
a hit and miss team, a lot like any team in the NBA. The Knicks last year are a good example, and the Knicks this year are a good example of what can go wrong if that shooting stops. I think that the Pacers, they were just shooting the lights out early in the year, and I think Paul George especially, his shooting tapered off in the second half of the season, and so I think that I think they're a fundamentally flawed team. I don't think that that's just the bench. I think that starting five isn't going to get you past Miami. And,
I agree. That starting five is not getting you past Miami. But you know what? I feel they could, if they actually do get a decent bench to help replace them. Because part of the problem that the Indiana Pacers have is that when their starting five was not on the floor, they would have one of the highest negative, efficiency ratings in the league, which just can't happen. And if we're looking into which, I think it's very funny you referenced how Spoelstra rested Wade this season as Popovich, rested Duncan and Parker and Ginobili.
Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, the entire Spurs team,
yeah.
really.
That, it's... I lost my thought.
It's okay. No problem.
Here's what I'm going to say. Because you follow how Spoelstra, you want Indiana to mimic what San Antonio has with their bench. Because I think what San Antonio proved this year is that with the right bench, when you're able to trust not 5 guys, but 9 guys, it changes. I think San Antonio's, the way they played basketball this year, might be the way we see more teams starting to develop because it's efficient. It works.
San Antonio kind of goes against this year. They went against the long-standing thought that stars win in the NBA. I mean, they have stars. They have rising stars. They have old stars. They have great players. But they relied so heavily on their team this year, and, Marco Bellinelli, Aaron Baines, for crying out loud. All of these guys, I think that's part of the reason why I think they can do really well in the finals against Miami, and I think they're going to win, or at least come damned close, is because, if Kawhi Leonard gets in foul trouble, there are 6 other guys who could come in and fill a position. If LeBron James gets in foul trouble, we saw this in the Indiana series, Miami really doesn't have a contingency plan. And that's my thing. Shifting back to the NBA Finals talk that we started with, and then went for 15 minutes on the Indiana Pacers for God knows why, but whatever. Here's
where I'll say, I think LeBron James has proven as a player that he is very smart when it comes to fouling, and I understand that. I completely agree with you, Kyrie.
We call Kawhi Leonard Kawhi for no real reason other than it's fun to say.
Kawhi Leonard, he gets in foul troubles. There are plenty to replace him. No one's expecting LeBron James to get in foul trouble, and it was such a rare thing that he did. And that was almost, I think, the first time in his career that he's missed. That's a playoff low.
It happened in the playoffs last year once. I can't quite remember when, but yeah, you're right. It's rare.
It's a very rare
thing to happen. It's exceedingly rare. Shifting back to finals talk, though, I think that. I think what Miami needs to win, because I think the Spurs are better this year than they were last year. I know that sounds a little crazy because Ginobili, Duncan, and Parker are all a year older.
Yeah.
First of all, Parker's only 31, 32. He's not that old.
Yeah.
Second of all, Kawhi Leonard is 1 year better. And finally, I think the Bellinelli and Mills are an upgrade over Gary Neal and nothing else, basically.
Yeah.
I think their bench is upgraded. And they got reps during the regular season that makes them
They have
better.
practice.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And we
They're
always
broken
talk.
in.
Yeah, they're broken in. And they're also well tested. The competition they faced to get to the finals was a lot heavier than who Miami had.
They
to
had
beat.
some sparring partners. That Mavs team was probably as good. That Mavs team that was the 8th seed in the West could probably have beaten the Wizards in the East. And I think that, I personally, I'm a sucker for Phoenix. This Phoenix team, I love them. But I think that Phoenix team, which was the 9th team in the West, probably, they could have gone toe-to-toe with Indiana. The West is just so much better right now than the East. I think the only thing that's going to change that is major free agency swings over the next couple of years. Possibly Kevin Love.
To Boston or to New York or one of the following.
New York, you mean?
We see the hopeful Knicks fan getting his hopes up. Once again, they never learn, do they?
Look, I am a Mets, Jets, and Knicks fan. I know disappointment. I did this the other day in my head because I like to torture myself. I root for 3 sports. I don't really care about hockey, which the Rangers are in the... Funnily enough, we decided to start a podcast when New York sports are totally irrelevant, except for the Rangers, which is the one sport that we don't really follow.
It's nothing against hockey. It's soccer and crack. It's kind of awesome. I can't keep up. I lose the puck too quickly.
It just wasn't a part of my youth. And
Same.
The other sports were, even soccer to a certain extent, because I played it.
Yeah.
I didn't really play hockey at all. Hockey's just not a part. No offense, hockey fans are awesome.
Oh, hockey fans are the best.
And
Ellie Perlowitz, shout out.
Shout out to Ellie Perlowitz, man. If you listened right now, if you listened up to the 27-minute mark, shout out to you. But first of all, there's no way in fucking hell that Ellie listened to the 27-minute mark.
I don't think there's no chance in hell anyone gets to the 27-minute mark of
Look,
this
we're gonna
podcast.
have one listener.
Graz.
Yeah. Exactly.
Shout out to you, Graz.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the second shout out to you during this. But at any rate, I think if the Rangers win, we're definitely going to have one of those two on because they're kind of nutso. Ellie's, I think, a little more nuts than Graz. In that, I think Graz is a nutso sports fan in general. But the thing is, Graz has had 5 Yankee championships and 2 Giants championships.
Ellie's had nothing in her life.
Ellie has been a me in her life. She roots for the Jets, the Mets, and Rangers, who have not had success. I can attest to at least 2 of those not having success. Anyway, back to my thing I was doing in my head to torture myself. So the last time that one of the teams I root for made it to the finals, the World Series, or the Super Bowl is 2000.
Wow.
Since 2000, that's 14 years ago. In that 14-year span, there has not been a single city that has those 3 sports teams in it that has not gone to the finals, where one of those teams has not gone to the finals at least once. Cleveland, for crying out loud, has gone to the finals once. There was... God damn it.
In New York, concrete jungles where dreams come to die.
Yeah.
I think that's something we've come to learn through the course of this podcast.
God damn it, all the hell.
We're going to get back on topic.
Back on topic.
Because Nichols could torture himself
NBA
for hours.
finals. This is what I do with my life.
Before we get back on topic, can I just say I think 2 of my happiest years were when Jets made it to back-to-back AFC championships and lost. I was broken. I was devastated.
Can I tell you, Tall, the happiest moments in my sporting life, number 1 is the Jets beating the Patriots in the playoffs.
That was beautiful.
It was best sports moment of my life.
That's so sad for you.
Best rooting for sports
Okay.
moment in my life. I've had better sporting moments, winning my homecoming game junior year on a comeback. We were down 25 points. I actually did start at center. That was a thing.
That was a thing.
For 2 years.
Proud of you.
How about that? So that was my happiest sports rooting moment. Second happiest, paradoxically enough, Andy Chavez making the ridiculous catch in Game 7 of the 06 NLCS.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And third happy, yeah. And then later on, Carlos Beltran didn't swing the bat and crushed all my dreams. Excuse me.
Do you know I've met
Well-
a lot of Mets fans who still hate Carlos Beltran with a passion for that.
Look, Carlos, we wouldn't have gotten there without Carlos, so I love the guy for that.
But we also lost it. Partly,
We wouldn't have been there without him. I think you can't.
Let's stop
Listen,
living in the
it
past.
still
Let's
gives
be-
me so much pain. You have no idea how much pain. it
Ladies
is.
and gentlemen, you cannot see the pain in his eyes, but I can, and it is heartbreaking.
Well, at any rate, the third happiest moment was when the Jets carried a 14-3 lead into halftime against the vaunted Indianapolis Colts, led by Peyton Manning. The Jets defense, led by Rex Ryan, their boisterous head coach in his first year, and then they lost the game 31-17. It was just terrible.
And then we gave Mark Sanchez a much-needed extension.
The Sanchez. I hate him. Unabashedly. He's one of my top sports hate guys. Like, it goes Tom Brady and then, like, 5 other dudes. And then Mark Sanchez.
I do not hate Mark Sanchez. I feel that he had the potential to be an okay quarterback, and Rex Ryan completely ruined him as a player. He shook up his confidence. He showed no faith in your quarterback. And you know what's the funniest thing? You're looking through what every NBA player, NFL player says when they like a coach, and it's like, he supported me, he believed in me, he had faith in me. You know what? Maybe Rex Ryan was smart not to have faith in Mark Sanchez, but he destroyed any chance of Mark Sanchez ever being a good quarterback by not giving him any to start with toward, bringing in Tim Tebow, having that stupid quarterback.
That wasn't him, though.
That
was
was
Mike Tannenbaum
that-
desperately trying to keep his job.
And-
And he got fired the next year.
He did get fired the next year, and you know what? I'm happy Rex Ryan has not been fired yet.
Oh, they went 8-8 last year.
Which is... He should
Their
have been
best
considered...
receiver was David Nelson. Who the hell is David Nelson? I mean, come on, man. They were incredible last year. That was one of the better Jets seasons of my life because there were no expectations and they did okay.
Can I just say that was one of the most relaxed football seasons I had last year? Because
I had no rooting interest.
Well,
other than rooting for my Jets, but they surprised me.
The only problem I had last year is many of you don't know me at all, so this is a surprise when I say I am a huge Detroit Lions fan. They started off 6-3. They did something that we haven't had in a while. They gave us hope, and they took it away very quickly. And I don't want to, I've tried blacking out that season as much as possible. I am just happy that Jim Schwartz is gone. I think Jim Caldwell is a great hire. I think he's going to do really well, good things for that Detroit team. They are in the playoffs this year. Calling it.
Lock it in.
Lock it in.
Lock it in.
Detroit Lions are playoff lock. That's not a lock. That's a clapping
That was
sound.
a clapping noise. I think you just peaked the mic. There's a giant spike at the thing I'm looking at right now, right where that clap was. Sorry if we blew out your headphones. But, by the way, back to that thing from 10 minutes ago. Fourth happiest moment in my sports life, my fantasy football team winning it all last year. Brandon Moore's ass cheeks, we took it home. I had a dynamite team, and I know no one likes to hear about other people's fantasy teams, but man, you know how sad that is, that the fourth happiest sports moment in my life is my fantasy team winning the championship?
May I just include something about your fantasy football team? Andrew Nichols had the first overall pick in the draft who got hurt.
This is true.
This is true. And I played against Andrew Nichols in fantasy on Tebow Has Risen. Ironic name,
Funny, yes.
Funny,
yeah. No, it was good.
Yeah. And he basically won fantasy football without having a quarterback.
This is true. My list of quarterbacks I used once Aaron Rodgers went down. Jake Locker got me -3 points. Mike Glennon got me 15 points. Which also led to the best trash talking we'd ever done in the league, which was I beat a guy. This was right after Steve Smith has pulled the ice up, son moment with I think it was the Patriots in that Carolina New England game, and then he told Aqib Talib to ice up, son, which then I posted a meme where it was just a picture of Mike Glennon and it said ice up, son, because somehow Louis Lapolis, shout out to him, lost to me even though I started Mike Glennon as my quarterback, who might not even be a starter this year. Continuing the list, though, Ben Roethlisberger, Jake McCown, who was great, by the way. I played him in the Cowboys game, and he just, oh, that was beautiful. Anyway, we've talked way too long about the fantasy team, and we still have not, we've given, a tiny bit into the NBA Finals.
Okay.
We've barely gone into it,
I think it's time to jump full, I think we've been tipping our toes in.
It's time to dive.
Time to dive.
It's time to dive. Biggest X factor in this series, so what do you think it is?
For the Spurs, I'm going to say Kyrie Leonard. And let me say something about Leonard. I love him. I am putting a lot of stock. I think he is, Pop has said it. I'm going to support it. Leonard is the future of that San Antonio Spurs team. He's just an incredible athlete who is defensively one of the top 5 players in the NBA. And I think his offensive game, we haven't begin to see the potential. Because I know he's not averaging the great numbers now, but he's one of the best players in transition. Almost unstoppable in transition. When he's attacking the rim, when he's just going headfirst to the rim, just get out of the way.
When he puts his head down, he is kind of scary. I think his long arms, too. You see him, he's able to just dunk it from, 10 feet away because his arm turns into the Michael Jordan in Space Jam arm and just...
I don't think, he reminds me a bit of LeBron. I don't think anywhere as gifted, offensively yet, but I think he is someone who makes the players around him better, does some of the things on the court that can't be measured by stats. And I think if he's locked in, if he's going to the series they're going to have to stop me, this is my team with Tim Duncan, with Tony Parker, I'm just as much part of this. If he sees himself like that, if he plays like the player that he has the potential to be, watch out Miami.
I think the biggest X factor in this series is Dwayne Wade. Because Dwayne Wade... allow me to read the statistics here. Dwayne Wade only averaging 18.7 points per game this playoffs with 4.3 assists, 3.9 rebounds. Now, you don't have to be a hyper NBA fan to know that that's down for him. He's not producing at the level that he once was, and I think that LeBron can carry a team, but he can't carry them as well as he... As stupid as this sounds, I don't think LeBron is at his highest point right now, because I think the best example is in the Brooklyn series, that 48-point game he had in Brooklyn, they won that game by 3. And if you remember a couple years ago when they played the Celtics, he went into the Boston Garden and, not the Boston Garden, the TD Garden, what's it called now? Something like that.
Something stupid.
He went in there, scored 45 points, annihilated, and they won by 20. He goes in now and he plays the annihilation game, and it might not even be the LeBron factor of it, and I think his team is a little bit worse. They're a little bit older. The role players aren't necessarily as good, as productive, and I think they rely a little bit too much on the roulette of Battier, Allen, and Rashard Lewis, who, you never know what you're going to get from those guys.
The fact that Rashard Lewis had a night where, he scored 0, and then the next game, he was 4 or 5 from 3?
Yep, he was lights out. I think they rely a little bit too much on that, and I think if they're going to win the series, because the Spurs are the exact opposite, where their team is reliable night to night, you're getting production, not necessarily from this guy or that guy, but you're getting production from somewhere. I think the Miami, they need that reliable production. And if Kawhi is doing his best to slow down LeBron, and that team defense is humming, the Spurs rotations are humming, and Tim Duncan is, helping on drives as quickly as he does, I think Dwayne Wade is going to have to take over at least 2 of the games and win them for Miami if they're going to have a shot in this series.
I respect what you said. I'm going to disagree with it. As much as I think Wade is an important factor in the series, I think Bosch's value. I think Bosch is more of an X factor for Miami than Wade, because Bosch has proven that he disappears sometimes. That he can, and if Miami wants any chance to beat the Spurs in this series, Bosch needs to step up. What he did last year against the Spurs will not be able to be enough this year.
He did not play well against the Spurs last year, but this entire year, Chris Bosh has been way more bankable than Dwayne Wade has on a night-to-night basis. That's why I think Dwayne Wade is the X factor, because I think Dwayne has to go back to something.
Yeah.
Chris Bosh, if he keeps playing the way he's been playing, I think he's reliable and you can count on him. If he goes back to where he was last year against the Spurs, it could be a real problem.
Well, the thing is with Chris, the thing with Chris Bosh is that I'm looking at this, another great written article from Grantland from Kirk Goldsberry. Bosh is an efficient player. Yeah. Bosh is incredibly efficient, and
thanks in large part to the amount of space that's given to him.
Oh yeah, because as Bosh often says, I'm usually open.
Yeah,
which is kind of
he's usually open.
And you know what? They have to make San Antonio pay for that gamble, and that's where I think Bosh can step up if he's consistently, as he's proven, able to hit that mid-range jumper. I think he shot 48% from mid-range this season.
I think the real thing they need from Bosh, they need him to improve, is his rebounding. Because I just looked it up because I wanted to, see the statistics. He's 6'11".
He's 6'11".
He's 6'11". I want you to guess. I will tell you higher or lower. Guess how many rebounds per game he is averaging this playoffs.
4.
Higher.
6.
Lower.
5.
5.7.
5.7.
It's not good. For a guy who plays 33 minutes a game, you should get more than 6 rebounds if you're 6'11".
Going back to something from a while ago, back to this fake scenario with Indiana Pacers trading to Portland, Robin Lopez will get Indiana rebounds. Can I agree with that?
Does Indiana need rebounds?
They do need rebounds. Okay, Hibbert does not do enough.
He did in the first half of the season. I just think that it's so easy for Hibbert to go back to the player he was. I don't know what the fuck happened to him.
Well,
but
yeah.
I mean, I just think I can see Hibbert going back. I don't know if I could see George Hill being the 4th best player on a title team. Anyway, back to the NBA Finals. We're staying focused.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I agree that Bosh has to do more in terms of getting rebounds. But I feel that what's going to be very important in this series is point guard play.
Point guard play is going to be huge. Obviously, there's a mismatch. I think, and if Parker is out, which I gotta hope not. I hope not for the sake of basketball.
I do not believe Parker will be out. If he is, that will be one of the greatest misfortunes for the NBA because it is depriving us what could be one of the best finals.
Last year, if last year's any indication, that was one of the best finals series ever. And it had one of the most ridiculous shots ever.
Yeah.
It was incredible. If Parker's out, that's a real problem. You know what? Funnily enough, I think the point guard matchup, if Parker is out, is even. Patty Mills and Manu Ginobili switching off the point guard position, I think is about as good as Mario Chalmers and Norris Cole. Maybe even slightly better this year, because they've just been non-existent, man. What the hell happened to them? They're young guys. What's going on with them?
You know what? The only thing we're to say with that is Norris Cole showed up in Indiana, and hopefully, this is a guy, and not many players can say this, he's won a championship every year he's been in this league. Not large.
Very, very, very few players. Is he the only active one?
No, he might be. 2 years in the league, 2 championships. It's a pretty good streak he's got going.
You know what? Norris Cole for MVP. I tweeted that yesterday, not yesterday, during Game 6. Boris Diaw for MVP.
By the way, I had Jordan Bass favorited on Twitter because I don't have one, and I saw it, and I'm like, Jordan, you have to favorite this for me because he needs to know that this is accurate.
Boris Diaw, another X factor, because in the Oklahoma City series, he was huge for the Spurs.
Because he's just a mismatch problem. What do you do with Boris Diaw?
You set a hot dog stand strategically close to the court, and then hope that Boris is distracted and somehow.
Raymond Felton got there first.
No, Raymond did. Well, no. That's why you put a gun stand next to the hot dogs, and then Raymond will go for that, and he'll avoid the hot dog stand.
I think you're absolutely right. Chalmers has been a shell of himself. What has happened to Chalmers? And, Norris Cole, I think one of the things he does, which is underrated, is his defensive presence. He's a very good defensive player.
He's feisty.
And you know what? I think, let's talk with the scenario that Parker is in. I think
I think that's our safest bet.
I think that's our safest bet.
And I think that's
is
the only way we could really analyze. Because if Parker's out,
it's a whole different series.
There's no series, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Parker's out. I have Miami in 5.
Yeah.
Dominantly.
Miami in 5 or 6. I don't think it'd be close.
Parker is such a huge part of that team.
He runs it.
Yeah.
He does.
He's Pop on the floor.
Yeah, he is. And well, I mean, Duncan too. Duncan is Pop on the floor, but Parker is Pop on the offensive side of the ball, and Duncan is Pop on the defensive side of the ball. The one thing that I think not enough people really pay attention to, but if you really zoom in and scope, really pay attention to the Spurs defense, Tim Duncan is talking all of the time. He's yelling stuff. He's saying pick, or rotate over there.
Constant communication.
It's constant talking, which is something that even when you're playing pickup, you don't hear it as much. Even though it's a lot simpler and it's a lot easier of an atmosphere. I just think I think talking is something that defenses in the NBA don't do enough, and it's what leads to James Harden defensive juggernaut videos.
Who, James Harden, also got a vote for second team defensive NBA.
Which is a travesty. It's really a travesty.
And for anyone who is asking why it's a travesty, I strongly recommend you to YouTube James Harden defensive highlights.
So if you type into YouTube James Harden, the first suggestion is James Harden defensive juggernaut. That's a sarcastic thing. Just click that. The first result has 805,000 views, and it's all highlights of this year. James Harden playing defense, just awfully. He's just terrible.
Can we just say this might be one of the funniest YouTube videos?
It's hilarious. If you like basketball and you know basketball, James Harden defensive juggernaut is one of the funniest videos out there.
I had to leave class. I was playing it. You sent me this link. I was playing it on mute, and I just started crying of laughter. The teacher looked at me. I had nothing to say. It was clearly that I was not taking notes and that I was watching the video, so I just yelled, "I have to use the bathroom," and I left.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. James Harden, I think the honeymoon's over. If we were going to shift to James Harden for a second.
He has to play defense. He has to start to... And Kevin McHale, I think he has to do a better job getting that out of him. Because that's just a lack of effort. And the coach is appeasing it.
James, you're not a one-man team anymore, You have guys around you. You have Dwight around you, Chandler Parsons. You have guys.
Yeah.
You have players. Patrick Beverley is a player.
Ooh. Can I just talk how much I really like Patrick Beverley?
Who doesn't like Patrick Beverley? Other than every player he plays against.
Which is the best part.
Every player he plays against hates Patrick Beverley, but we love Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley, you're never listening.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of, we don't have a title for this yet.
Friend of we don't have we don't have a title for this, or we don't know what we're calling this yet?
We have many different names.
We have nicknames. We're going to get all the domain names. Yeah. All of the domain names are getting just eaten up. My thing with James Harden, you know what you're getting offensively. He averaged 25 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and had a 23.5 PER. He's good offensively.
He's great offensively.
He just doesn't try defensively. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
He's become a designated hitter. He only plays offense, and that's a real problem.
You can't have that from your second best player or best player.
I think he's their best player. James Harden, too, during the Portland series, dude was not even in it towards the end.
No.
He just looked like he was out of shape. I mean, I am out of shape, but James Harden is a professional athlete who gets paid to be in shape, literally. So if you're sucking wind and just letting guys blow right past you on defense in overtime of a playoff game, there's something wrong. And that's what I think the biggest thing is. I'm excited to see if James Harden comes back next year and is dynamo, in shape. Let's go. I think the Rockets are dangerous. They're scary because they have 2 of the 10 best players in the league.
I am very interested with the Rockets to see what they do with Chandler Parsons. I think that is a very I'm interested to see what happens with Chandler Parsons this year, and also what additions, possible mellow talks that
God.
we hear from Houston.
God, don't let Mellow Pod is going to be after the finals. We're going to talk about Mellow, but
All right.
I mean, Houston, I think right now, and I'm racking my brain right now, and I know I'm going to miss one team, but Houston is one of 2 teams right now that can say that they have 2 of the 10 best players in the league. Because I think it's them and Oklahoma City with Westbrook and Durant. And Dwight is a borderline top 10 player.
The thing is, it's when Dwight is healthy. No, not Dwight. Dwayne. I'm thinking LeBron and Dwayne Wade. And
I don't know
Dwayne
if
Wade
Dwayne's
is not
there
top
anymore.
10 anymore. And
Yeah.
so, because that's the only other exception I was thinking.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade has nights where he looks like a top 10 player, but he's not. He played 54 games this year. I keep coming back to that. You can't be a top 10 player and only play
Speaking
54
of
games. Oh, I'm
limited-
sorry. You know what? The Clippers. I forgot about the Clippers.
True.
Blake and Chris Paul are definitely in that conversation.
Speaking of limited playing time this year, or lack of limited playing time, Russell Westbrook had 3 knee surgeries.
Russell Westbrook is the fucking Terminator. Russell Westbrook is not the cushy Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator. I'm talking about the dude from T2 Judgment Day. Dude had 3 knee surgeries in a year. All right, I'm just gonna read you 4 numbers. Okay, these were his playoff averages: 26.6 points, 7.5 rebounds, 8.1 assists, and 1.9 steals per game. This is a guy who had 3 knee surgeries in the past year, and he just put up those numbers. That is insane, Tall. That is insane.
I had ankle surgery a year and a half ago, and I still can barely walk.
Russell Westbrook is insane. And
He's the most.
He's a snarling killer. I love Russell Westbrook.
You know how I would describe Russell Westbrook? Passionate. I have
Really
not.
tall.
I
Really. That's your professional
That's
opinion.
my-
These are the informed opinions you get on this podcast.
Yeah, passionate. Because you know what? They're losing that San Antonio game, right? You know they're losing that game. And Russell Westbrook, 3 knee surgeries, is diving on the floor, is jumping,
No.
is trying to make every possible play because this guy, and people who play sports who are good, who are just gifted athletically, note Russell Westbrook, one of the most athletic freaks, the most athletic point guard we've probably ever seen in the NBA.
Yeah, it's him and, Derrick Rose when he was Derrick Rose, but I don't know what's going on with
We'll
him.
see if Derrick Rose can return to shape. Hopefully he can, because I think Derrick Rose makes this league more exciting.
He does. I love Derrick Rose. But anyway, back to Westbrook. I mean, that play, everyone talks about in that OKC versus Clippers series, in the game that the Clippers blew the huge lead with 45 seconds left.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about the Reggie Jackson, it was a foul or it was out of bounds, whatever. What people aren't talking about, Russell Westbrook stole the ball out of Chris Paul's hands in order to get that play to happen, and it's just insane because he's like 3 feet in the air and he just rips it right out of Chris Paul's hand. And Chris Paul, not exactly like a shaky dude,
No.
not a guy I would say is quote unquote turnover prone. That's not how I describe Chris Paul, but Russell Westbrook just grabbed it from him. He just yanked it out of his hand. It was beautiful. I love Russell Westbrook. I think if Kevin Durant had Russell Westbrook's brain implanted in him, they would have to fold the league because Kevin Durant would average 64 points a game.
Can I also just say it was something that my favorite writer, Bill Simmons,
Our favorite writer.
Our favorite writer,
We both
Bill
love
Simmons.
that guy. Him and Zach Lowe are two of the
Always
best.
smoke him on our show.
Dude,
Always.
if they ever came on,
To this kitchen.
I just jizz continuously until I ran out of body fluid and died.
I think what Bill Simmons wrote about, Oklahoma City's title window, and I think it was a brilliant article.
It's a great piece. I recommend it.
Go on Grantland. You can
find it there.
I
It's
think what he
under the
wrote,
Simmons.
and we're looking back at Kevin Durant's MVP speech, which I thought was brilliant. I watched all 26 minutes of it.
You the real MVP, Tom. You the real MVP.
Thank you. I know. Just the way Kevin Durant talked about, Russell Westbrook. It's just these guys, I feel, could totally win a championship together, but they need more. They need more, and that's the thing. And it's, you look at that.
Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant and Serge Ibaka are 3 top 25 players in the league. I think that's pretty clear. They have the best 3 in the league.
Yeah.
Reggie Jackson's their 4th best player. He's solid. I like him. Who's their 5th best player? Is it Steven Adams?
Is it Steven Adams?
Is it Nick Collison?
Because no way. And you know what? This is something that
Adams
Scott.
I think Adams is going to be a good player in the league.
Adams has developed tremendously
in 1 year.
Yeah. No, because you think about where Adams started, and this is someone who's like, yeah, they'll probably send him to the D League, just to get his feet wet. No, Adams came in and he fit a really necessary role that Oklahoma needed. He needs to step up more. I feel like because who was saying this? I feel bad. I'm not. This is not my original thought, but someone was saying, Oklahoma City, they want to be serious. They need someone who can dominate the post, who can absolutely, get them 10 points in the post consistently. Kendrick Parsons is not that person.
Oh my God. The Harden trade is a travesty. It's an absolute travesty to all basketball fans. Kendrick Perkins playing significant minutes every night is the second biggest travesty that Oklahoma City's pulled. Because Kendrick Perkins, man, he's just useless. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't even defend that well. He's just a big dude who lumbers around out there. And Scott Brooks' insistence on playing him is baffling. Absolutely baffling. I don't get it at all.
I can't. I don't want to begin to try to explain that. Kendrick Perkins cannot be your starting center for a championship contender team. I'm sorry. And you know what? It's also with Oklahoma City. And like I said, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant could really, we talk about the James Harden trade, which potentially ruined a dynasty. Because if you have James Harden, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka on the same team,
fold the league. Fold the league.
But, we talk about Kendrick Perkins, it's sad. It's just sad. It's sad to watch.
It's sad to watch. I tell you what.
But, just to go back at Game 6, that 4 players scored. You had Kevin Durant, Reggie Jackson, Derek Fisher, Russell Westbrook, and Serge Ibaka. Those were your only 5 players to score. Derek Fisher had 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you cannot win like that. You cannot be a championship team like that. Because you're not a team if that's the way you play. A team is not 4 or 5 players. And I think San Antonio has proven it. And I think, Miami, despite their bench is nowhere near San Antonio's, but they had a very reliant bench for the entire season.
They did. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I feel bench points and bench play, and I feel the Spurs have the advantage of this, but I think that which bench steps up?
Yeah.
Does Marco Bellinelli go ice cold like he did in Dallas? Does Norris Cole come in? Or maybe they bring Chamos off the bench.
I keep thinking that Bellinelli is done, and then I remember last year the Chicago Bulls were playing with Joakim Noah at 50%, Nate Robinson, and Marco Bellinelli, and they won a series. I think Bellinelli's a real player, and he did he endeared me to him forever, mainly because he did the Sam Cassell Big Balls dance, which is one of my favorite things that now they've called technicals on all the time whenever someone does it.
Ridiculous.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
And they call the NFL the No Fun League.
Yeah. The NBA, No Balls Association. Just going back to your point, I have it in front of me, the Game 6 statistics. It was Ibaka had 16, Durant had 31, Westbrook had 34, Jackson had 21, Fisher had 5. And that was it.
That's it.
They had 5 players score.
And you know what? Scott Brooks gets...
Guys weren't even shooting. That's the thing. Because Adams went 0 for 1 from the field, and Lamb went 0 for 3 for the field. So they had 7 guys shoot the ball.
And, I think Scott Brooks unfairly gets a lot of negative attention for not having a system. And you know what? To just go with that for a second, What system could Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant possibly play in? Because they are both guys who are so ISO heavy. The problem is Scott Brooks has nothing else. If Kevin Durant's not making shots, if Russell Westbrook's not making shots, that's it.
I'm going to disagree with you because I think that Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant could run a variation of a high screen, high pick and roll, and just every time. Because you figure if Durant doesn't roll to the basket, he could pull out for the pop and nail a 18 to 22 footer very consistently, more consistently than basically anyone in the league. If they roll to the basket, Durant's a great finisher at the rim. He can always finish. If Westbrook pulls free from his defender, watch the fuck out because he's driving to the rim and Russell Westbrook is the goddamn Terminator. He's the T-1000. I think that Brooks can be held accountable mainly for his insistence on playing Kendrick Perkins because he's a net negative on defense.
You know what? Here's the thing. I'm not going to say Scott Brooks needs to go, but I think Scott Brooks is on the hot seat because
if they don't make it to the finals next year, he's gone. I think it's fair to say.
Lock it.
Lock it in. Apparently that's a lock it in noise, according to Tall. But, yeah.
And you know what's really nice with watching Oklahoma City play? Oh. Before I get to that, something I do want to say is something Kevin Durant, what I want him to do this summer. And Kevin Durant, you have no reason to listen to a 5'6" white kid from Westchester. You have none. But the only thing I would like to say to you, Kevin Durant, Mr. Kevin Durant, sir.
Mr. Kevin Durant, sir.
You get a post game. You do what LeBron did. You go work with Hakeem.
True.
You get a post game. Chris Paul's not going to be able to defend you anymore. Tony Allen won't have as much luck. You're going Kyrie Leonard.
6'11".
And Chris Paul stopped him. Completely stopped him. When all you have to do.
That's unacceptable.
That
really.
is unacceptable.
It's unacceptable.
Kevin Durant, you're great. You're great. You could be better, which is scary to think.
Oh my God. Like I said, put Russell Westbrook's brain into Kevin Durant. Just do it. Just do it.
Do we have the science? Do we have the technology?
Of course we do. We have the science. There's some crazy shit. Like, doctors can take just like a single cell and make a human being out of that whole thing. Modern medical science is incredible. They can do whatever the hell they want. I mean, anyway, underrated name, Russell Westbrook. Very difficult to say. We've said it a bunch on this pod, and we've had a lot of Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook. Yeah. Do you think we've adequately previewed the NBA Finals by talking about the two teams that lost in the conference finals for half the pod?
No, I don't think we did a pretty good job. But you know what? I think we had a great conversation.
We did. It was and we hope it's entertaining. This podcast is not going to be just sports either.
Yeah.
We have a lot of topics lined up. I think the main one we want to get into is summer movies. We're going to try a couple formats, one of which I think we're going to preview the film for half of it before we go see it, and then do another one. We're going to have a podcast breaking down Olympus Has Fallen versus White House Down. We're going to have a lot of great stuff in store for you.
Guys and girls, probably less girls listening because it's us.
There's like one girl listening.
Abby, shout out to you.
Yo, Abby did not get the... Come on now. Abby did not listen to the entire...
Because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just tell Abby to fast forward to the where we are.
The 103-minute mark.
Oh my God.
1 hour, 3 minutes. Yeah. I didn't think we'd be able to do it. I really didn't.
Yeah.
Good job on us. We're going to have to bring it every time now.
What we gonna have to do, that's a terrible sentence.
What we gonna have to do is...
Alright. Nichols and I are very excited to continue to having conversations, and you know what,
But the only way we get to do that is if you all send me $5. No, I'm kidding. We're doing this for free.
Yeah.
This is not,
This is just for fun.
Joy of our heart, yes.
Yeah. Alright, thank you all for listening. Shout out to, ESPN for providing information, and
Grandland for being an inspiration for so much of our opinions.
We wanted
what we talk about.
Starting on our next podcast, we will start ending all our podcasts with a footnote from Bill Simmons.
You know what? We're going to start that tradition now.
We're starting that tradition now. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a treat.
I have the power of the internet in front of me, so, I'm going to find one.
I've been reading the book and just highlighting book notes that I think are, worth
I just loaned it. I just loaned the book to Tall, and it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite books of all time. If you're a basketball fan, it's 700 some odd pages, but it's wonderful.
May I just say personally, and this book is great because I'm reading it from start to finish, but you can jump around to different chapters in it, and it's not like there's some fluidity, but there's enough that you can, read it straight or separate it. But the very first chapter in that book was basically a personal essay that Bill Simmons wrote about going to watch Larry Legend, and he just encompasses and really describes what it is to be passionate and to love basketball and to love this game. And it's just one of the, it's been a highlight of my summer for so far reading this book.
Yeah, it's a great read. I cannot find for the life of me.
Yeah, because I was trying to Google it and my computer died. So you know what? We'll end.
Did you get one on your notes?
No.
No? Okay. I'm gonna look through my notes now, and I'm gonna look for a piece of wisdom
A piece of wisdom.
A piece of wisdom that I can impart on our. What are we calling the people that listen to the show? Listeners is too bland. They're definitely not fans.
They're totally not fans. They are people.
They're people. I don't know. People's too generic though.
Too generic.
We could call them something insulting.
I don't want to be mean.
The asshole lickers.
The douchebag.
We're calling them the asshole lickers. I've decided it.
The douche nuggets.
No, the asshole lickers.
I think that's too crude.
I don't. I think if you're listening to this podcast, first of all, if you have listened up to this point, you're sick. You have get a job.
Get a hobby.
For God's sakes, man. If you have listened to us ramble for 1 hour and 6 minutes now, because we've spent the last 3 minutes doing nothing. We don't know how to close a show for crying out loud.
We really don't. We tried writing a script. We got to the introductions.
Yeah, we wrote the introductions.
And then said, fuck
that was a
it.
2-minute thing, and then we were like, you know what? We have to record it now. I'm feeling it. So at any rate, I'm going to leave you with just the thought that Charles Lepolis, otherwise known as Primetime, this is the first thing in my notes, he relinquished his 16th round draft pick in fantasy football because he sucks at NHL fights in the video game. He lost it to Glass because he lost a fight in that game. Take that in, America. If you think you're having a bad day and you feel stupid, just know that Charles lost his pick because of that.
And with that, we say good night.
Good night, America.
We love you.
We love you, asshole lickers.